Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're completely dismantling our financial system to look at the absolute mind-blowing reality of how money actually works. We interact with it every single day, right? We earn it, we spend it, we definitely stress over it. But honestly, how often do we stop and ask where it comes from or why it holds any value at all? So we're going to decode the entire system. And I promise you, by the end of this Explainer, you're never going to look at a dollar bill the exact same way again. Here's a quick roadmap for today. We'll be looking at what money really is, how banks create it, the real-world limits on that money, and finally, how central banks control the whole shebang. Let's get right into it. Section 1. What is money really? From cowrie shells to paper. To really understand this system, we have to challenge our most basic assumptions. Think about a modern $100 bill. It's basically just 3 cents worth of paper, some ink, and a few security threads. There is absolutely no intrinsic value in that little rectangular strip. So why do we spend our lives chasing it? Why do we trade our precious time and energy for it? To figure that out, we have to look at how money evolved. Historically, societies used commodity money. This is stuff like gold, silver, cowrie shells, or even cigarettes. The huge advantage here is that it's universally trusted. If you have a gold coin, you can buy food with it, or you can literally melt it down to make jewelry. It has actual physical worth. But let's be honest, it's heavy, and it's super annoying to divide into smaller amounts. So we evolved to use fiat money. Now, fiat money has zero physical or intrinsic value. It's backed by nothing but universal faith and a government declaring it to be legal tender. It's cheap to make, easy to carry, and incredibly efficient for a global economy. But, and this is a massive but, its entire existence relies 100% on our collective trust. Take a look at this comparison. It really brings the point home. On the bottom is an antique silver certificate from 1957. If you read the text, it says, payable to the bearer on demand. That literally meant you could walk into a bank, hand them this piece of paper, and walk out with a physical dollar's worth of actual silver. It was commodity-backed. Now check out the modern fiat bill on top. That promise to redeem it for silver? Totally gone. Instead, it just says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. The only thing backing modern money is our faith in the system and the government's word. But what happens if that trust evaporates? Well, without trust, fiat money fails, and it fails spectacularly. The ultimate cautionary tale here is the 1923 German hyperinflation. Facing massive war debts, the German government just started printing money nonstop. Because fiat money has no intrinsic value, flooding the market completely destroyed the public's faith in it. By late 1923, inflation hit an unbelievable 35,000% per month. Prices were doubling multiple times a day. The currency became so worthless that people were literally burning it in their stoves because it was cheaper to use as firewood than to buy actual firewood. Lifetime savings were wiped out in an instant. It just proves that public trust is the absolute glue holding our fiat system together. Moving to Section 2, how banks create money. The fractional reserve system. All right. Here's the massive plot twist of modern economics. Are you ready? The government doesn't actually create most of the money in our economy. Your private bank does. It all comes down to fractional reserve banking. This actually started with medieval goldsmiths. People would store their gold with a goldsmith for safekeeping. But the goldsmiths soon realized, hey, everyone isn't coming to withdraw their gold all at once. So they started acting as middlemen, making loans by handing out more paper receipts for gold than the physical gold they actually had in the vault. Today, banks do the exact same thing. They stand between savers and borrowers. When you deposit cash, they don't just lock it away. They're legally required to keep only a small fraction of your deposit on reserve, and they are free to lend out the rest. By holding just a fraction, banks literally create new money every single time they write a loan. So your initial deposit doesn't just sit there, it actively clones itself as it bounces through the economy. Let's trace it. Step 1, you deposit $100 in cash into Bank A. Step 2, let's say the reserve requirement is 10%. Bank A keeps $10 on reserve, and they loan the remaining $90 to a guy named John. Step 3, John takes his $90 loan and buys a bike. The bike seller takes that $90 and deposits it into their own account at Bank B. Step 4, Bank B now has a fresh $90 deposit. They keep 10%, which is $9, and they loan out the remaining $81. Think about what just happened. Your initial physical $100 bill has now turned into your $100 deposit, plus the seller's $90 deposit, plus the next person's $81 deposit. That is $271 in total bank deposits, all created from your original $100. And this isn't just some random chaotic process. We can calculate exactly how many times a single deposit will multiply through the entire banking network using a brilliantly simple formula called the money multiplier. It's just 1 divided by RR, where RR is the reserve ratio, or that legal percentage the bank is forced to hold on to. Let's do the math real quick. If the reserve ratio is 10%, or 0.10, the multiplier is 1 divided by 0.10, which equals exactly 10. That means your initial $100 deposit can legally create a maximum of $1,000 in total money across the entire banking system. It's an endless chain of banks making loans, people making deposits, and banks making more loans. Nearly all the money out there is actively created by private institutions. It's basically magic. On to Section 3, Real-World Money Limits. Why the math isn't perfect. Okay, in theory, that $100 creates a full $1,000. But the real world is messy, and human behavior throws a wrench in the gears. The math assumes banks loan out every extra cent, and people redeposit everything. So why doesn't it always hit that maximum? Well, fear. Fear shrinks the money supply. First, we have excess reserves. During a recession, banks get terrified that borrowers won't pay them back. So instead of lending, they hoard cash above the legal requirement. Then you have mattress savings. The whole multiplier depends on people putting money back into the bank. If you're scared of the banking system and decide to hide your cash in a shoebox under your mattress, which actually happens a lot in countries with unstable financial systems, that money is permanently yanked out of the lending cycle. The multiplier just stops dead in its tracks. Section 4. Central banks control it all. The puppeteer. So if private banks are creating all this money by lending, who's setting the rules? Who controls the whole multiplying system? That is the central bank. Think of the central bank, like the Federal Reserve in the US, as the grand puppeteer. They have 4 major monetary policy tools to speed up or slow down the economy. First, open market operations, buying and selling government bonds to commercial banks to instantly increase or decrease the money supply. Second, quantitative easing, or QE. This is a massive, aggressive tool used when interest rates are already near zero. They buy long-term securities to flood the market with available credit, just like they did during the 2008 financial crisis. Third, reserve requirements. They can literally change the RR in our math formula. If they lower the requirement from, say, 10% to 5%, banks instantly have more money to lend. Fourth, the discount rate. This is the interest rate the central bank charges commercial banks for short-term loans. Make it cheaper for banks to borrow, and they'll lend more to us. And on top of all of this, the central bank is the ultimate bank for banks. They run the clearing system that processes all the electronic transfers and checks flying between different banks every single day. Let's look at that first tool, open market operations, in action. Say the central bank decides to buy $20 million in government bonds from a local spot. Let's call it Happy Bank. Where does the central bank get that $20 million? Honestly, they literally create it out of thin air. They just type some numbers into a computer and boom, Happy Bank's account at the central bank is credited. Suddenly, Happy Bank has $20 million in fresh cash, which they immediately turn around and lend out, kickstarting that crazy multiplier effect all over again. And make no mistake, they will use these tools aggressively when things get rough. Look at March 2020. When the pandemic hit and triggered a massive global panic, the central bank made a historic move. They dropped the reserve requirement down to literally 0%. Zero. By completely eliminating the requirement, they allowed banks to loan out every single penny they had, frantically flooding a paralyzed economy with credit to keep the whole thing from collapsing. Which brings us to the end of our explainer and leaves us with a pretty fascinating realization. This massive interconnected web of wealth, the cash in your pocket, your car loan, the central bank's computer screens, it all fundamentally rests on our collective, fragile faith in an invisible digital system. Our money is fiat. It works simply because we all agree to believe it works. So I've got to ask you, after seeing how money is created from thin air, multiplied by private banks, and pulled on strings by central powers, do you still view the money in your wallet the exact same way? Keep that in the back of your mind the next time you tap your card or hand over a dollar bill. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.